Hello, students. Good morning to all of you. Today, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you. Today, we are going to start the second lesson of a Flamingo book of a class 12th English course, that is A Lost Spring. So, as the title of this lesson itself is a lost spring, and this title also have a subtitle, and the subtitle of this particular lesson is Stories of a Stolen Childhood. So here today we are going to see this particular lesson that is called as a lost spring with a subtitle Stories of a Stolen Childhood. So let me first of all introduce the author of this lesson, and this lesson or the story is written by the great Indian writer called Anish Jung. So Anish Jung, born in the year 1944 at Rourkela, and see, belongs to a very aristocratic family of a Hyderabad, and she was brought up in a well-to-do family because her family itself is a very rich enough. So she took her earlier education at Osmania University, and later onwards she went to foreign in order to continue her higher education also. So after returning back from completing her education, she starts writing, and she become one of the Indian popular woman author. Not only she wrote, even sometimes she worked as a journalist, a columnist for a major newspaper across the India, as well as even at abroad also. And basically, this Anish Jung had got an inclination of a literary bent of the mind because Anish Jung's father also was a great writer, and not only a great writer, he was holding one of the prominent posts during the Nizam of Hyderabad Nizam. So, with these, she got a good education, and she, during her career of writer, she wrote a lot of books, and her popular book called Unveiling India, Seven Sisters, like so many books she wrote it, and here are some of the books which I would like to bring to your kind knowledge. The first one, in the year 1990, she wrote The Song of India. Prior to that, also she wrote it. In the year 1987, she wrote a book called Unveiling India, which becomes very popular. In the year 1993, she wrote A Night of the New Moon. In the year 1997, she wrote another book with title as Breaking the Silence. And in the year 2003, she wrote the book called Beyond the Courtyard. So these are some of the prominent works of Anish Jung. And here in this lesson, the Anish Jung is going to picturize the harsh reality of the society in which we are all living. So, dear students, you just glance these pictures because as already we are in the process of going through the pictures at the first lesson also I had given you some pictures. So here also I would like to show these pictures because these pictures conveys a lot of things to us. I hope all of you are getting or inferring meaning out of these pictures where all these kids are very much happy and enjoying themselves, and they are expressing in the sense that they are experiencing the joy the joy of their own childhood, and that what it's very much reflected in the picture itself. So now this is another second picture. I hope you might have got it what I would like to talk, because in this picture also the children are there, but these children are not unlike that children. The first picture in which we saw the children are very much jubilant, very much happy, very much playful, but whereas here in this picture we are going to come across the children who are working. That means the age in which they are supposed to play, the age in which they are supposed to enjoy, and where they may get a lot of love, care from their elders. But these children are very much unlucky children, and at the very early tender age, they are heavily burdened with the problems of their life, and they were forced, they were compelled to do the work. And with this heavy work, they are unable to enjoy the life itself, and even sometimes they may not able to get the education which is essential for each and every human being in order to lead a honorable life in their life itself, and even the life with a dignity, a life with a respect which they are supposed to have it. So all those things are going to miss a lot in their life because they are born and brought up under these circumstances where they were forced to take up the work at the early stage of their life, which they are not supposed to do. So let me show this one video, and through this
Around the
video we would
world,
like to come to
218
know
million
the
children are
problem
involved in
of the
child labour.
children.
Child labour is any work done by children that is dangerous, keeps them from getting an education, and is harmful to their health and development. India is home to the largest number of child labourers in the world.
Most of the children who are working today in child labor belong to low caste in Indian caste-ridden society. So that socio-cultural factor is a major factor. Most of them are belonging to untouchable, the traditional untouchable caste, and tribals and minority communities. So that's one very, very strong factor. The number of children are forced to leave the villages, or sometimes the labor recruiters go in search of cheap labor, and they look for those areas which are poverty stick areas, those areas which have floods and waterlogging, the areas which have drought, so drought hit areas, natural disasters definitely. So it's a combination of several factors. And of course, these people who are being trafficked are the poor people. And beside poverty, the illiteracy and ignorance of the parents and community is also a major factor.
In 1989, the United Nations adopted the Convention on the Rights of the Child. This is an international agreement recognising the special rights of all children to be treated fairly, equally, and with dignity. It states that rights are non-discriminatory. They are for all children, not just some. It recognises that all actions concerning children should be in the best interests of the child, should promote their development, and should give them a say in matters affecting them. The rights are grouped into 4 key areas. The right to survival. All children have the right to the food, clean water, shelter, and healthcare that they need to live. The right to protection. All children have the right to feel safe and secure. Children are especially vulnerable to abuse and neglect. This is especially true in times of war and in many types of child labour. The right to development. All children have the right to an education and time to play. Children need opportunities to grow and develop in all aspects of community life. The right to participation. All children have the right to be involved in the life of their communities, to express themselves, and to participate in decisions that affect them. This is essential for children to protect themselves from abuse and exploitation. Child labour infringes on all of these rights.
Unfortunately, we have the largest number of child labor in the world. At least 60 million children, according to non-governmental statistics, are still working in various forms of child labor. So it's a serious problem. But when we talk of child labor in India, about 70% of these children are working in agriculture sector, in fields and farms, in rural economy, and rest are working in construction industry like stone mining, quarries, brick kilns, and then small scale industries everywhere. Then you can find quite a large number of children working in household activities like domestic child labor. And then you can find children working in street restaurants and entertainment industries all across India.
Child labour has existed for generations and is not easy to eliminate. But all around the world, people are working to address the causes of poverty and put an end to child labour. This involves improving education for children and adults, community development, and improving incomes. It also means writing letters to companies and governments about child labour and buying fair trade products that guarantee that no child labour has been used.
Child labor is the denial of childhood. It's denial of human dignity. It's denial of freedom. It's denial of their future. It's denial of their being as human being and denial of their dreams.
You can do something right away by speaking out and telling your friends and family. If enough people speak out, governments and companies will listen.
So, as the Nobel laureate Kailash Satyarthi pointed out, that the child labor itself takes away the joy of a childhood itself. And here, this particular lesson, The Lost Spring also, which is written by Anish Jung, is going to talk about the national shame of a children is being forced to live a life of poverty and exploitation. And that is what the shameful thing which is happening in our country. So, dear students, you just glance another this picture, and you might have seen the in my previous video as well as previous picture, and here also you can see, but the scenario is totally changed over here, where the children are enjoying their life, and they are enjoying not only their life amidst the beauty of the nature, they are trying their level best to exert and feeling the real gist or the joy of the life by playing, by enjoying themselves in the lap of nature. So let's just see one more this clip, which is going to tell us what actually the spring, because this lesson is going to talk about the lost spring. So first of all, let we come to know what is a spring. And this is a spring where the children who are born and who are starts growing up as just like the flowers which are blooming in a nature, they should also come up in their life. But it's not at all happening as it is supposed to be. Dear students, as through this particular clip, as we all came to know that a spring is a season which associate ourselves with optimism and hope. It also works as a metaphor for a childhood stage of our life also. Right from the time we are born until late childhood, each one of us and every child hopes for new beginning and a bright future. It is natural and it is expected way of the life itself. But the phase of childhood is all about the innocence, energy, tremendous inclination towards the outdoor activities, along with the fun and play amidst of the beauty of the nature. And even the children who are supposed to play, they doesn't have any limit at all. So it is also a time for getting more skill and knowledge and even to get the education by the way of going to the school. And that is what the beauty of a spring season. But here we are not at all going to talk about that the spring, rather we are going to talk about the lost spring because particularly in this lesson the narrator, in the sense the author, is going to talk about the lost spring, and lost spring is nothing but a stories of a stolen childhood. Once again, you be concentrate on this particular picture. Here in this picture, there is total a contrast as the first two kids are very much joyful in their life. But if you see again those two, another picture where we come across the sad future of a mankind itself, and that is what it is reflecting through their facial expression, through their appearance of a physique itself. And this is what the contradiction of the society in which we are all living. The author Anish Jain, through this particular lesson, she is trying her level best to tell us about the indifferent situations in which the children are supposed to enjoy themselves are forced to do the work. And that is what Sime going to talk about, such kinds of a children who are missing their real childhood life. So, as the title itself indicates, it is about the lost pin. And here, the story, actually, this particular story is an extract form from the book of Anish Jain with the same title, that is, The Lost Spring. And during this lost spring, the author had brought out the stories of a stolen childhood. And among those stories, the two stories had been picked up under this particular lesson titled as Lost Spring. The first one, okay, the story, before going towards the first part of that story, let me introduce the lesson. So, as this particular lesson or the story titled as Lost Spring deals with a deplorable condition of poor children who get forced to miss the simple joys of their childhood because of their socio-economic condition in which they are born. These children are not given an opportunity for going to a school, and even they are forced or compelled to start doing work early in their life. And this is what the Anish Jung trying her level best to convince through these particular two stories. She may going to talk about the grinding poverty and the tradition which is compelling the children to work in the most inhuman and hostile conditions. So, the author succeeds through this lesson in highlighting the plight of such a unfortunate children who are doing a work in our society. And that is what the poet want to convey through this particular lesson. So, as I told you, this lesson consists of the two stories. The first story is about one boy titled as Sometimes I Find a Rupee in the Garbage. That means that boy is working with a garbage, and one who work in a garbage to pick up the things, they are called as rag pickers. And sometimes I find a rupee in the garbage is a story of one such rag picker boy named as Sahebe Alam. And the author had the case study of this particular boy, and whatever she had come across herself when she met this particular boy, and that what we are going to come to know through this particular story as having again the part, that is the first part with the title as Sometimes I Find a Rupee in the Garbage. And the second part of this story is titled as I Want to Drive a Car. So, I Want to Drive a Car is also a story of one innocent boy who was working in a garage, and it's his ambition to become a driver of a car, and that's why this particular story is titled as I Want to Drive a Car. So, during this particular lesson, with the title of a lost spring, we are going to see these two stories. The story of Sahib Alam, and the second story is about a story of Mukesh with the title of I Want to Drive a Car. And the first one, that what we have seen, the title as Sometimes I Find a Rupee in the Garbage. So these are two stories which we are going to deal in this lesson. So prior to plunge ourselves in the story, let me talk something about the theme of this lesson. The theme of this lesson, as it is through the video clippings or the introduction, you might have come to know, here the author is going to describe about the plight of a street children. And those street children are forced to do the work, that too, the labor work in their early life. And they were denied the opportunity of going to the school, and because of that, they are unable to take up the education. And that is what, because of that, they are going to face a lot of problem. And whatever the problems that they face, and whatever the difficulties they might are going to come across, and that is what the author want to convey through this particular lesson. Again, this lesson lost spring is also having a sub theme, and the sub theme of this particular lesson is nothing but the callousness of the society and the political class to the sufferings of these poor kids. And that is what the author is going to highlight, the callousness attitude of the society and the inhuman approach of the political class towards the sufferings of those poverty people. And as we all know that it is a shameful thing to have the child labor, though we have abandoned it. Still, somewhere in the corner of a world or in our own country, we are forcing the children to do work. And here, the author is going to describe those poor children who are condemned to the poverty towards a life of exploitation. And even here, the author is going to unveil the utter destructions of a rag pickers of a Simapuri and even the bangle makers of a Firozabad also. And that's why it is said the story is going to describe about the grinding poverty. Grinding means unending poverty, and the tradition that which compelling the children to live a life of exploitation. The message which we can able to get it from this lesson is the lesson Lost Spring says the two stories of a stolen childhood. The first story is about the Sahib Alam, and the second one the story of Mukesh. The characters and places are different, but the problem which the children are going to face, it is more or less the same only. And there are thousands of Saib and Mukesh who are condemned to live a life of misery and exploitation, even nowadays, also in the society in which we are all living. As we discuss the grinding poverty or the traditions which are going to compel the children to work in almost inhuman and hostile condition, and Anish Jain trying her level best to highlight the plight, the condition of such unlucky, unfortunate children who are supposed to bloom, who are supposed to enjoy, who are supposed to feel themselves the joy of the childhood, they are going to miss and they are heavily burdened. And that is what the message the author is going to convey through this lesson. So let me now, before going towards the story, introduce the characters of this particular lesson. In the first part of the story, we are going to come across the character named as Sahib Alam, and second story is about another character called Mukesh, a boy who was working in a bangle making glass going industry, and Sahib Alam, again it is a story of a rag picker who was living in a Delhi in a particular place called Simapuri. And apart from that, the narrator also going to get a chance to encounter both the Sahib and Mukesh. And in the second part, we are going to come across the character named as Savita also. So these are the characters, and these characters we will come across in a due course of the story when we begin the first part as well as the second part of our lost spring. So let me give you setting of the story. The setting of this story, that means the story itself is going to take place. The first one, the story of Sahib Alam is going to take place at the place called as Simapuri slum, which is there at a New Delhi. And the second story, it is going to set in a place called Firozabad. And Firozabad is a very popularly famous for bangles. A lot of glass glowing industry where the bangles are going to be prepared, and all such kinds of bangle making factories we can able to see at each and every house of a Firozabad. And these two stories are going to take place in this particular place called Simapuri upon New Delhi, and the second one that is a Firozabad. And third place which we are going to mention over here in the due course of this story, that is a Dhaka. And as we all know, the Dhaka is the capital city of Bangladesh, where a lot of migrants came over there to the India, and they got settled down in the Simapuri, and basically most of them, they are from the place called Dhaka, and that's why they are called as refugees of Bangladesh also. And lot of such people had got settled down just in order to get their bread and butter of the life itself. So in these places, okay, these are some places where the story is going to revolve around. So with this brief introduction, I hope you got enough information, and with these informations, we are going to begin the first part, and that first part of the story we are going to start tomorrow itself. Okay, So, dear students, if at all you have any queries or doubts, you may ask me so that we can able to clarify your doubt. Okay, either you can write it in a comment box or else you can do the WhatsApp to me in a class 12th WhatsApp group also so that we can able to try our level best to solve your queries. So with this, the online and offline class, today's class is going to come to an end, and as the class is going to be presented by myself, that is Rakesh D. Nadakarni, Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalaya, Shankar Nagar, and at last I would like to express a thanks to each one of you. Thank you so much. So tomorrow again we will back with the first part of the story of a lost spring. Thank you.